These are 20 things you didn't know about NHL players. Number 20. Connor McDavid is the most superstitious player in the NHL. McDavid's been wearing the same socks every game since he was a teenager, and his habits only got weirder since. That's why fans can't wait to see what he does next. McDavid's always parking in the same spot, making his family sit in specific seats, doing the exact same pregame routine, and the one time his routine got messed up, he made sure it never happened again. The guy literally has lucky underwear that he refuses to wash during winning streaks. His teammates think he's crazy, but when you're scoring goals like McDavid, nobody's gonna mess with your superstitions. McDavid just can't live without his crazy routines. Before we get into these insane stories, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Me and my team are working hard to deliver you the best content you love, and we try to post regular videos about the wildest sports stories you never knew existed. Seriously, your support means everything to us and helps us keep bringing you this type of content. But at number 19, what Sidney Crosby can't live without has me thinking he's the most paranoid player in the NHL. Which family member would you avoid on game days? Your mom, your dad, or your sister? Crosby won't call his mother or his sister on game days because he thinks it brings bad luck. His sister even confirmed this in interviews, saying she knows not to text him before games because he gets weird about it. 3 times Crosby called his mom on game days. 3 times he got injured. Broken foot, dislocated shoulder, and then his concussion problems started. Now his whole family knows the rule: no contact on game days. Look at Crosby, man. Scoring goals on the ice but dodging phone calls from his family like they're carrying some kind of curse. But Crosby is Crosby, and when you've won 3 Stanley Cups, maybe avoiding family phone calls actually works. At number 18, Alex Ovetchkin is secretly the biggest party animal in the NHL. Ovetchkin's been throwing wild celebrations since he started breaking records, and his party stories only got crazier since. That's why fans love watching him score goals. We've seen Ovetchkin dancing on tables, celebrating with fans until 4 a.m., turning every goal into a reason to party, and the one time he broke Gretzky's record, the whole city of Washington partied for days. The guy literally brought the Stanley Cup to a nightclub and was pouring champagne out of it like it was a regular Tuesday. His teammates say Ovechkin's energy is so crazy that he makes everyone around him want to celebrate everything. Score a goal? Party time. Win a game? Let's go dancing. Break a legendary record? Time to shut down the entire city. Ovetchkin just can't score a goal without turning it into a celebration. But at number 17, Nathan McKinnon just received a diet plan that nobody else in the world follows. McKinnon's been eating gluten-free and dairy-free since he became obsessed with perfect fitness, and his workout routine is so extreme it makes other players look lazy. This guy trains harder than some Olympic athletes and follows a diet stricter than most monks. McKinnon won't touch bread, cheese, or anything that might slow him down for even a second. He's got his own personal chef who makes special meals that taste like cardboard but apparently give him superpowers on the ice. His teammates joke that McKinnon's body is so fine-tuned that he probably digests food faster than normal humans. The man treats his body like a Formula 1 race car. Only the best fuel goes in. So of course, McKinnon's body is a machine that never breaks down. At number 16, Leon Draisaitl is secretly McDavid's best friend. These two share the most romantic relationship in the NHL. Draisaitl and McDavid do everything together. They train together, hang out together, and even finish each other's plays on the ice. Their friendship is so tight that teammates joke they're basically married. They spend so much time together that other Oilers players started calling them the old married couple because they bicker like they've been together for decades. But the craziest part is how their chemistry translates to goals. These guys can score without even looking at each other because they know exactly where the other one's gonna be. But at number 15, Austin Matthews almost never existed without his mustache. Matthews has been obsessed with growing the perfect mustache since he got to Toronto, and his facial hair stories are legendary. Matthews spends more time grooming his mustache than some people spend getting ready for work. The guy's got special mustache wax and a personal barber who only works on his upper lip. During the playoffs, Matthews grows his mustache so thick that fans started rating his goals based on how good his mustache looked while he scored them. And because Toronto fans love everything about him, they even started growing mustaches to match their superstar. Half the city looks like they're stuck in the 1970s just because their hockey hero refuses to shave his upper lip. At number 14, Erik Karlsson's hair care routine takes longer than some hockey practices. Carlson has been perfecting his hair game since he entered the NHL, and his grooming habits are more intense than most fashion models. This guy has a whole system for keeping his flow perfect, and teammates say he spends at least an hour on his hair before every game. Carlson's got special shampoos, conditioners, hair masks, and he even travels with his own hairstylist because he can't trust random barbers with his precious locks. His hair routine is so intense that younger players ask him for advice like he's running a beauty salon inside the locker room. The man's hair has its own Instagram following, and fans literally come to games just to see what his flow looks like that night. But at number 13, Kale Marner is secretly the biggest perfectionist in hockey. Makar has been obsessing over every detail of his game since he was a rookie, and his training habits make other players look casual. As a rookie, Makar would stay after practice for hours, perfecting the same move over and over until it was flawless. This kid's attention to detail is so crazy that coaches use him as an example for other players. Makar studies video of his own games like he's preparing for a final exam, taking notes on every single play and figuring out how to do it better next time. He's the type of guy who practices his celebration moves just in case he scores, because even his goal celebrations need to be perfect. And teammates say Makar treats every practice like it's Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. At number 12, David Pastnack has the weirdest personality in the NHL. Pasternak's been cracking jokes and doing bizarre interviews since he joined the Bruins, and his humor only got stranger since. That's why reporters love talking to him. Pastrnak makes weird faces during interviews, tells the most random stories, answers serious questions with jokes, and somehow makes everyone laugh even when his team loses. The guy once spent an entire interview talking about how he named his stick after his grandmother, and nobody could tell if he was being serious or just messing with everyone. His teammates never know what's going to come out of his mouth next, but they love it because Pastrnak keeps the locker room loose, even during the most stressful times. But at number 11, Nikita Cucharov does something that proves he's the funniest Russian in hockey. Kucherov's been bringing his unique Russian humor to the Lightning locker room, and his teammates say he's the guy who keeps everyone loose. Kucherov makes jokes that only make sense to him, does impressions of other players that are so good they're scary, and somehow makes everyone laugh even though half the time nobody understands what he's saying. His English is perfect, but his sense of humor is so Russian that American players just stare at him trying to figure out if what he said was funny or insulting. The best part is when Kucherov tries to explain his jokes, he gets so frustrated that people don't get his humor that he starts laughing at his own explanations. His Russian humor hits different. Now, at number 10, we have Johnny Goodro, whose story shocked the entire hockey world and left everyone in tears. Johnny and his brother Matthew tragically died in a bicycle accident caused by a suspected drunk driver in New Jersey. The night before, they were supposed to be groomsmen at their sister's wedding. Johnny was only 31 years old, had an 11th season NHL career, and was known as one of the nicest guys in the league. Players called him Johnny Hockey because he made the game look so easy and fun. The entire hockey community mourned the loss of Johnny and Matthew, with teams holding moments of silence, fans leaving flowers outside arenas, and even rival players breaking down, crying, talking about Johnny. His death reminded everyone that life is precious and hockey is just a game. Carey Price got into the worst mental health battle in NHL history. Price was dealing with substance abuse and depression while being the face of the Montreal Canadiens, carrying the pressure of an entire city on his shoulders. The guy who was supposed to be unbreakable was actually falling apart behind the scenes. Price said, "Troy, I would wake up on Sunday mornings and tell myself I would never do this again, but I kept doing it. I got to a point where I really needed to stop, and I thought it was a good time to ask for help." What made it worse was that Price is part of an indigenous community where addiction has hurt so many families, so he felt like he was letting down more than just his team. He was drinking to deal with the pressure, the losses, and the constant criticism from fans and media. Price spent 30 days in treatment, missing most of the season, but he came back and opened up about his struggles. He said going public with his story wasn't just for him, it was to show other people, especially in indigenous communities, that it's okay to ask for help. Price turned his darkest moment into hope for others. What happened to Matt Duchene almost made him quit hockey forever. Duchene's son was born way too early and nearly died, putting everything into perspective for the NHL star. His wife gave birth at just 24 weeks, which meant their baby weighed less than 2 pounds and had to fight for every breath. For weeks, Duchene didn't know if his baby would survive, spending every day at the hospital instead of thinking about hockey. He'd sit by the tiny incubator, watching his son struggle with tubes and machines keeping him alive. Duchene said those weeks in the hospital were the scariest of his life because doctors couldn't promise anything. He missed games, missed practices, and didn't care about any of it because nothing mattered except his son surviving. The team supported him completely, telling him family comes first. When his son finally came home healthy months later, Duchene said it was the greatest victory of his life, better than any goal he'd ever scored. Now every time he plays, he thinks about how lucky he is to have his healthy son watching him. At number 7, Oskar Lindblom survived something that should have ended his career. Lindblom was diagnosed with Ewing's sarcoma, a rare form of cancer, right in the middle of his best NHL season. He was having a career year with the Philadelphia Flyers when doctors found a tumor and told him he needed to start chemotherapy immediately. Lindblom was only 23 years old and thought his hockey career was over before it really started. He spent months in chemotherapy, lost his hair, lost weight, and wasn't sure if he'd ever play hockey again. The treatment made him so weak that some days he couldn't even get out of bed. His teammates wore shirts that said Oscar Strong and kept his jersey hanging in the locker room as motivation. But Lindblom fought back with the same determination he showed on the ice. He finished his treatment, started training again, and actually returned to play in the Stanley Cup playoffs the same year he was diagnosed. When he stepped back on the ice, both teams gave him a standing ovation. His comeback gave hope to cancer patients everywhere who saw that you can beat this disease and still chase your dreams. But at number 6, Ryan O'Reilly did something that almost destroyed his NHL career. O'Reilly was involved in a hit-and-run incident that could have ended everything. He crashed his truck into a Tim Hortons, and instead of staying to deal with it, he panicked and drove away. The whole thing was caught on camera, and when the story broke, O'Reilly looked like just another spoiled athlete who thought he was above the law. He made a mistake that could have cost him his reputation, his career, and his freedom. The media destroyed him. Fans turned on him. And even his own teammates didn't know what to think. But O'Reilly took responsibility, faced the consequences, and worked to rebuild his life. He paid for all the damage, did community service, and spent years proving he was a different person. O'Reilly eventually won the Stanley Cup and the Conn Smythe Trophy, showing that he had turned his life around completely. His redemption story shows that even good people can make bad decisions and still come back stronger if they're willing to do the work. Kevin Bieksa secretly became a hero away from the ice. Bieksa was at a beach when he saw a child drowning and didn't hesitate to jump in and save the kid's life. Most people would have frozen or looked for help, but Bieksa's athlete instincts kicked in and he acted immediately. The child had been pulled out by a strong current and was going under when Bieksa saw what was happening. Without thinking twice, he dove into the water fully clothed and swam out to grab the kid. Bieksa had to fight against the same current that was pulling the child under, but his years of training and his hockey toughness helped him power through. He got the child back to shore where paramedics took over, and the kid made a full recovery. The family was so grateful they stayed in touch with Bieksa for years, sending him updates and photos as their child grew up. But here's the crazy part. Bieksa barely talked about it publicly because that's just the type of person he is. He saved a life and treated it like it was no big deal, just something any decent person would do. At number 4, Henrik Lundqvist discovered something that ended one of the greatest careers in NHL history. Lundqvist found out he had a serious heart condition that required open heart surgery right when he thought he had more years left to play. The King had just signed with Washington to chase his first Stanley Cup when doctors told him his heart couldn't handle the stress of playing anymore. Lundqvist asked his doctor the question that changed everything. If I was your brother, would you tell me not to play? The answer was yes, and that's when Lundqvist knew his career was over. The doctor explained that his heart valve was leaking so badly that continuing to play could literally kill him. Lundqvist had to choose between risking his life or retiring from the game he loved more than anything. He chose life, but it was the hardest decision he ever made. The surgery took 6 hours, and even after it was successful, complications kept him from ever returning to hockey. The King of New York had to hang up his crown, but he's alive and healthy to watch his daughters grow up. But at number 3, Patrice Bergeron did something that made him a legend forever. Bergeron played through the Stanley Cup final with injuries so severe that doctors told him he shouldn't even be walking. We're talking about a separated shoulder, broken ribs, and a punctured lung. Injuries that would put most people in the hospital for weeks. But Bergeron taped himself up and played every single game because his team needed him. He was literally playing with a hole in his lung, which meant every breath was painful and every hit could have been life-threatening. His teammates didn't even know how badly hurt he was because Bergeron never complained or showed any sign of pain on the ice. After the series, when people found out what he had been playing through, everyone realized they had witnessed one of the toughest performances in sports history. Doctors said later that Bergeron was risking permanent damage by playing, but he didn't care because winning the cup was worth any risk. That's the kind of sacrifice that separates good players from legends. At number 2, PK Subban kept a secret that changed thousands of lives. Subban secretly donated $10 million to a children's hospital, making it one of the largest charitable donations by an athlete ever. But here's what makes it even more incredible. He didn't do it for publicity or recognition. Subban made the donation and asked the hospital to keep it quiet because he wanted to help sick kids, not boost his image. The only reason people found out was because the hospital eventually had to announce it when they named a wing after him. Subban had been visiting the hospital for years, spending time with kids who were fighting cancer and other serious illnesses. He saw how much the hospital needed money for new equipment and better facilities, so he wrote a check that was bigger than most people's entire careers. When the donation became public, people realized that Subban's big personality and flashy style came with an even bigger heart. He literally saved lives with that money, funding research and equipment that helped hundreds of children get better. But the most emotional story I ever heard was number 1, and I guarantee you never knew that Roberto Luongo only became a legend because he played through the worst pain imaginable. Luongo's father died right before the biggest games of his career, and instead of taking time off to grieve, he decided to play in honor of his dad. His father had been his biggest supporter, the guy who drove him to every practice and believed in him when nobody else did. When his dad passed away suddenly, Luongo was devastated, but he knew his father would want him to keep playing. So every save was for his father, every win was a tribute to the man who taught him to love hockey. Luongo said later that playing through that grief was the hardest thing he ever did, but it also made him appreciate every single moment on the ice. He could feel his dad watching from heaven, and that gave him strength to make saves that seemed impossible. His teammates said they had never seen Luongo play with so much emotion and heart. When people talk about playing for something bigger than yourself, this is what they mean. Luongo turned his pain into purpose and became a legend in the process. Now that's what true love for the game looks like. Damn, these NHL players go through so much more than we ever see on TV. If you enjoyed learning these crazy stories about your favorite hockey players, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Me and my team are working hard to deliver you the best content you love, and we try to post regular videos about the wildest sports stories you never knew existed. Seriously, your support means everything to us and helps us keep bringing you this type of content. Also, let me know in the comments which story shocked you the most. Was it McDavid's crazy superstitions or Luongo playing through his father's death? I read every single comment and love hearing what you guys think.